Welcome to BlackUSA.news morning show. I'm your host, William Honolulu Jr. Join us as we explore the news and opinions that impact our community. We break down how the major stories have a very personal, local, and racial impact. No topic is off limits, but even if the conversation gets rough, we're always going to keep it real. Greetings and salutations, all my people out there in internet land. I am William Honolulu Jr., and I have the privilege and honor of serving as the host of the Black USA News Morning Show. Happy Wednesday, April 20th, 2022. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, today is 420. And as you all know, the morning show in Black USA News, we are a cannabis-friendly organization. We understand the medicinal purposes and the medicinal usage of cannabis, and we understand that there are certain diseases and disorders that can only be treated with cannabis. There's this type of epilepsy that virtually no other treatment on the market works for, but utilizing THC and some of the other components automatically quells the symptoms. It is an amazing plant, an amazing medicine, an amazing chemical. And it's been kind of railroaded for the last century or so, 50, 70, 80 years, because other people wanted to make some money on it. On other things. This got caught, hemp as a product got caught up in the politics of commerce. So when businesses were trying to put the hemp industry out of business, what they said was, hey, hemp is bad, it's the devil's lettuce and all these types of things. And it comes with certain consequences even now, even as we have unrefutable scientific evidence of the health benefits and the mental health as well as the physical health benefits of cannabis. We still find ourselves in a situation where people are getting locked up for it. On the other side, the people against the legalization or the expansion of the legalization of cannabis, a lot of times they talk about, the drug culture and the violence and things associated. Well, okay, I give you that, but that doesn't happen with cannabis a lot. And when it does, there are other features. And so banning cannabis doesn't get rid of those things, because guess what? Prohibition has been around for a while, and those things still happen. We have people who are in jail, and now we have companies that are making millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars in it, while these same people are languishing. Additionally, the people who are in the system, many times they don't get the resources that they need so that they don't have to return to this life of crime. We're going to have an opportunity to talk about not just cannabis, but we're talking about cannabis in the context of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a really good friend of the show back again. Dr. Caston is a wearer of many hats and a community advocate. He is an educator. He is an advocate for the reentry population. He is an advocate for the LGBTQ community. He is a person who I have seen in action really transform how students see themselves. And he's fluent in Spanish. So you just got it going on. So we're going to talk to him a little bit later because, I got show notes because I get really excited when I bring you all people I know. I told you I know some dope people. So I get excited. So I got to go over my show notes. So I still do the parts of the job that I need to do. Okay, show notes. Big ups to super producer Kyle Crazy Horse Morgan and Brandy Raymar, our assistant producer. They do all of the behind the scenes to make sure that we are able to provide you all the type and quality of programming that you deserve. We also, Black USA News, we want to make sure that we're giving back to the community and really investing in helping develop critical capacity in the community for all of those organizations and individuals who are investing in communities, in many of our communities that were disinvested previously. We want to make sure that we're supporting them. So Black USA News, we're having part of our nonprofit series. We're having a workshop on how to start a nonprofit on April 23rd. That's a Saturday at 1 p.m. It's all virtual. You can go and hit up that website for more information or to register, or you can just visit www.grindinggang.com BlackUSA.news.com for more information. Also, in that same vein, for those organizations or those individuals who have started, who are currently doing work or who are trying to do work but need some additional resources, we have a grant writing workshop on the 30th. That also is a Saturday, starts at 1 and it's virtual. We specifically focus on grants under $50,000 in this workshop because the workshop is designed for those organizations and businesses that are either in the early stages or have lower financial needs. And sometimes it's easier for them to get some of the startup money if they can package their organization right. And we want to help people understand how to do that. So if you are part of an organization or you know an organization that needs some resources, needs some assistance, needs some development work with critical capacity, make sure that you refer them to our events on the 23rd and the 30th of April. Okay. I think I got through all of my show notes. You know what I mean? I make sure I say all the stuff I need to say because I get an opportunity to talk to one of my very good friends today, Dr. Caston. Hello, Doc. How's it going?
Hey, how you doing today, William?
Oh, you're muted, sir. Okay. There's a little delay. I'm sorry. I thought you were muted. Okay. So, Doc, I know you've been on the show before, but some of the guests may not remember you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, hello, everybody. Again, my name is Dr. Caston. I'm currently an educator. I'm an advocate for inner city youth, also particularly LGBTQIA plus youth and community members, and also for those who are returning citizens, so for those who have done a stint in the prison system who are trying to return back to keeping their feet on the street and trying to destroy the revolving door of recidivism. Also, a Spanish educator by trade, a linguist and language lover, and world traveler. That's a little bit about me.
Okay. So you heard my lead in about how cannabis has how cannabis has been perceived and legislated over the course of the last 50, 80 years. And what happened, one of the things that I learned in kind of doing research on cannabis and cannabis policy was that Richard Nixon also used cannabis. He didn't start the official war on drugs, but he set the seeds for it because he wanted to discredit Black communities and Black organizations and people who were anti-war. So he started making marijuana associated with hippies and the Black Panther movement, and really trying to scare I guess what they would be called now conservative white folks into being harder on people with cannabis convictions, with cannabis. So in that context, so this was designed and deliberate. As you have worked, because one of the things you mentioned is that you work with returning citizens. As you have worked with them, what have you seen as it pertains to those who are incarcerated for cannabis convictions or cannabis offenses?
Well, I think it's very, very unfair now that big corporations are making money off of this product, and we have a lot of inner city, and particularly Black and brown people who have been incarcerated for years at a time for selling or having the intent to distribute marijuana. I do think that as we begin to progress forward, that legislation and those legislators need to begin to look at laws in order to alleviate some of these people of these felonious charges that they have had in the past. What is that going to look like for people who have that F on their life report card? How are they going to be able to how are they going to be able to be productive citizens of society and help to regain to take the dirt off of their name, for lack of better words, So what is that going to look like? Because a lot of people have been demonized for that, And again, with 420, those of you who are planning on partaking on today, please make sure that you don't end up on somebody's random list tomorrow, because we also know that even in the ramifications of it being legalized in regards to medicinal purposes, that from time to time, depending on who and what you're working, who you're working for, or what type of work you're doing, that you may still be held accountable to some of these um, these harsh rules and some of the harsh consequences that's going to come along with it.
That is absolutely true. And so one of the things that you put into context is that when we're looking at the utilization of cannabis and the implications that it has, you're right. It's not just criminal. There are economic implications, and even when you're using it as medicine.
Exactly. And and I think that we have to be mindful of all of the wonderful things that from the research and how people are recovering, how people who are dying from cancer, who don't have appetites, they're able to build an appetite. It helps with reducing nausea, helps people to be able to sleep at night. It helps to bring down the height of anxiety for some people. So there are lots of benefits from it, that are medicinal. Not to even speak of the recreational portion for those who just like to partake just because it's recreation, it's a hobby, it's a culture, as well. And thankful Maryland is being progressive. From what I understand, it looks and appears that it's about to make the ballot when we're going to be going to the ballots really soon to determine if that's something we want to see happen in the state of Maryland. Should recreational marijuana be legalized here in our state, and I think that's going to bring some great debates and great conversations in regards to, okay, now do we move beyond, just decriminalize it, making it medicinal, but now can we honestly say that people are going to be able to partake in this recreationally during their leisure and during their downtime. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to go, because I know a lot of times, when you advocate for something, you think that everyone thinks like you or operate like you. But when there is a yin, there must be a yang. So here, would there be some of us who are pro cannabis, we have to know that there have to be those who are anti as well. So it's going to be interesting to see and begin to hear the conversations that people are going to have over this substance.
Right. And you're absolutely right, because of the development of the conversation will really kind of not just show you who's on what side, but also some of the thinking behind it. Because one of the things that I have found is that a lot of the people who look at the stigmas around cannabis, who look at how or how people engage it and stuff like that, comes from a place of ignorance. It comes from a place because, they may have never experienced it, or they don't know anybody, or they don't know that they know somebody in their friend group who engages. And I used to be one of those people. I got taught real early, drugs are bad. All the drugs are bad. If a doctor doesn't give it to you, it's bad, and it hurts the community, it kills people, and blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking, like, people do that? Like professional people use drugs? Oh my goodness. And when I got to know people who did, I realized that the image that I had been taught about who they were because of this behavior and who they actually were, there was the incongruence.
Sure.
These people were good people, and not only were they good people, like, general personality, but they were great at their jobs and professions. And so, to your point, it was, again, going back to the stigma and how we are taught about it, and how we create these barriers and these boxes for other people to live in without having to be educated, without that level of ignorance.
Sure. And I can remember some of the propaganda, reefer madness, of watching that when I was a little younger.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Also,
oh, my God. I forgot about reefer madness. I forgot about that. That was a real
indeed.
thing they talked about.
Yes, indeed, or how it drives you mad. And also, me coming from the generation of DARE, drug abuse, and education, and understanding that cannabis was the gateway drug to, you eventually doing crack cocaine, or you snorting coke, or you becoming a heroin addict and addicted to dope. So it shied you away from it, or helped you to form a negative stigma towards that substance, because it could lead to the spiraling of one being out of control in regards to substance abuse. And also to some degree, I think it depends on the psychological mind frame of an individual who is using any type of substance. If you're not careful, it's a possibility of it you spiraling out of control. But those are a lot of times those outliers or the anomalies to something than it is the norm.
Right.
And I think another issue that I'm sorry, I wanted to really point this issue out too.
Mhm.
Because I know I come across as super liberal, but something about this cannabis piece that's happening now is once you receive the medicinal card or you decide that you're going to partake, they want to infringe upon the Second Amendment upon these people who are seeking this for medicinal purposes. Because in the state of Maryland, if you have a medicinal certification or medicinal card or have to use
Mhm.
marijuana for medicinal purposes, then you're not allowed to own or have
Oh,
to
right.
have a registered
Handgun.
gun.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? And really with me thinking about that, I really think about a lot of the pro-slavery laws that were made, in regards to sort of disenfranchising the black community in particular with us not having access to these things. So, it's really interesting for me to really want to discover what the demographics are, and is this something that has been put in place in order to continue to marginalize particular groups in
Yeah,
regards
absolutely.
to illnesses and things that they possibly may have. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that sort of work hand in hand, because it sort of is saying that if you must utilize marijuana for medicinal purposes, then you don't have the wherewithal in order to
Right.
have handgun access, which is quite interesting to me because, what about those who are prescribed different things from doctors who have, even more detrimental effects
Absolutely.
on the human brain, but yet these people are not necessarily stopped per se from being able to have handgun ownership and rights. So that's going to be really interesting to watch, and I really want to begin to have these type of conversations to see what people, just where people minds are,
Right.
what are people thinking in regards to the Second Amendment and gun ownership and cannabis use as prescribed by a doctor.
Right. And you bring up a really great point in that the example I used earlier in the lead in, I talked about there's a type of epilepsy that you can have that
Sure.
no other, like, I think the report I read or the article I read said that, for this little girl, nothing they had tried to mitigate her seizures was working until they tried this THC, and it worked instantly, and like she has no symptoms of the epilepsy. But
Wow.
to your point though, watch this. If she was in Maryland, they would allow her to have a handgun before she used the marijuana and not afterwards.
Mhm.
She has a neurological condition, and again, I don't think she should be banned either way. I think she should be taught how
Sure.
to use a report responsibly. But to your point,
Of course.
before she has what it is that will help her be able to handle a handgun, because think about it, you got a handgun or you pull a gun on somebody, you're normally in a stressful situation. You're
Mhm.
in a stressful situation, and you're about to discharge a weapon. That sounds like something that could trigger a seizure. But she's still allowed to have a handgun. But once she gets a medical card to get the marijuana to calm her down, so if she's in that
That's true.
situation, she'll be more responsible and safer. Now she can have a gun. So
No.
that is like there's a I'm sorry. You see, you got me all excited. I'm kicking cameras over and everything. I'm like, but like that is, I never even thought about it that way. Like you were right. They are saying that taking medicine, and this is not, and again, this is not, and even I'm sorry, because I'm thinking about it more. It's not even across the board, because you have the indica strains, and then you also have the sativa strains, and the
Mhm.
sativa strains don't have the psychotropic or the psychological effects that the indica strain has. So it's still
Exactly.
THC. You could be taking THC that has no cerebral effects, and still be told you can't have a gun. Wow, dude, thank you. I never even thought about that from that point.
Yeah, that's true. So it makes me wonder, since they came up with that, is there some intentional disenfranchising that's happening there?
Oh, yeah. I'm
Is
sorry.
it
It makes
intentional?
you wonder. 'Cause I appreciate the fact that you are a polite man, Doc. I appreciate that. I'm not so polite. I'm gonna tell you, yes, it is, and it's not just black and brown, but because you know how whenever those with power target those without or with less, somehow it always lands harder on the black and brown people. It's like everybody
That's
gets,
true.
everybody who doesn't have gets screwed, but black and brown people get screwed a lot more. I'm gonna give you an example using
Sure.
cannabis. If I am a rich person, right? Just like and be clear, this is true for abortion. This is true for all of these kind of right wing. We need to protect people against themselves. If I have enough money, there are no law. There's not a set of laws for me. I have enough money. I can get whatever. Like people, they've been smoking weed for a long time. They've been doing this.
For
But guess
years.
what? Now in Maryland, if you don't have the $200 to, I think it's 200, 250. I think it's the cap is like 250 or whatever. If you don't have that much money and you don't have the money to pay for the cannabis yourself on an ongoing basis, and go through the whole thing of applying, getting all your paperwork, and all of these things together, you got to go through all of that because I'm a caregiver for a person, so I'm familiar with the process. So you got to
Sure.
go through all of that and then come up with money on your own to supply because your insurance won't cover it. So if you don't have extra cash, if you don't have disposable income for your medicine, you will be out. Like think about this little girl. If she can't get if her insurance company doesn't cover cannabis, then now her parents got to come out of pocket for literally life-saving medicine.
Yeah.
If she was a diabetic, everybody would be protesting.
That's correct. Where can we get cheaper insulin? Where can we get, cheaper prescription medicine for people? But it's really something to really, to really begin to ponder and to really begin to think about as we begin to see this paradigm shift in our nation in regards to cannabis, and during this conversation, what does that look like? What should pharmaceutical or the government or be supplying or making sure that people have access to? Because we can definitely see that there is a need and that a lot of people are selecting as well to utilize. Because they say this is more of a holistic manner in which you're trying to treat yourself versus using things that are made pharmaceutically. So I think that those are things that we have to remember as well. Where we will support those things that are pharmaceutical that a lot of times have a lot of damaging residual
Yep.
effects than actual smoking or ingesting those things that have THC in them. So those are just some questions to really just to begin to ponder. I think for those who are watching, as you're beginning to make up your mind in regards to your stances, those are the questions that you need to really begin to ask yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Xanax or other type of medicines that are highly addictive acceptable and other forms are not as acceptable?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just because it's something that is? I mean, we're talking about things that are normally man-made and manufactured. That are given to people that are highly addictive. That
Yeah.
people can't put down and can't function without them after
Yes.
they get them within their system. Where it's believed or research has shown that THC is a lot of times merely just
Yep.
psychological when it comes
It's
to
non-addictive.
the dependency. Exactly.
And so, and one of the points that you made, because you're right, the evidence is not refuted. That like the argument is no longer that there is no benefit to the THC. What the argument still is that there are a group of people who are scared, and it is and the policy, because they're scared, they develop what I call petty policy. And
Sure.
so it's kind of like so like uh so well me and my audience knows I have a very petty streak. Like I have a very petty streak. Okay, so this is like one of those things where it's like, oh, yo, you ask me, hey, do you want to go here? And I'm like, nah, I don't want to go. And you're like, well, we really should go here. I'm like, I don't want to go. And you're like, okay, we really should go. And I'm like, you know what? Fine, but we're not going to have a good time. I'm going to act like a jerk the entire time, but we're going to go. You won't get it. So that's what happened with this legislation. It feels like you get THC. Oh, yeah, but you got to go through all of this. You got to pay all the money. You got to do all this. It's like, but I just want to be able to take care of myself. Like, it's not like I'm
Sure.
trying to, whatever, but it is that kind of petty policy because I am afraid. I don't want to go anyway. I'm nervous, but if we go, I'm gonna put so many parameters around it that is gonna make it
Sure.
like you're not gonna have a good time. Like I know some of the patients, some of them are like, they may get 27 grams again, licensed by a doctor, okay, And that's a gram a day. It's less than a gram a day. So let's say they get 27 grams, but they can only afford like 18 a month. So what does that mean? They now have to start rationing. They have what do they call them? Doing chocolates, where you take the little back end of the joint if you smoke, and then you roll it in the rest. So like you're smoking ash. Like like all of these things are economic. You know what I mean? Like not because you want to, not because like, oh, let me smoke a good ash joint. It's like, oh damn, I don't have anything else, and I need this to make it through the day. I have a medical condition that I can't deal without. And again, you know, when I talk to people about cannabis use, and they're like, oh, they need to get help or whatever. I said, the funny part is that you know I'm a diabetic. You have never said a damn word about my metformin. But this lady over here, she needs to find a new way. She needs to, but you want me to pray my diabetes away? Is that what you want? Like, because I don't understand medically, what's the difference?
Yeah. How are they different? But I think it's those things we've been conditioned to believe a certain way. And again, you know, I know especially for my generation, you know, I was always taught that was a gateway drug, so I made sure to stay away from it. You know, because I didn't want to be addicted to heroin. I didn't want
Yep.
to be like many family members who are addicted to crack cocaine, you know. Therefore, you stay away from it. So even hearing them beginning to bring up the research and, you know, having a little bit more life experiences and things, you know, it's kind of hard to begin to shift your mindset from this being something that again is going to lead me to stand on the corner begging for money,
Right.
you know, so that I can get my fix. You know, it's kind of hard to get some of those ideologies out of your head after you have been taught this and believing this for so many years. You know, so
Yep.
you believe that it's just, you know, oh, they need to find other ways to cope. There, you know, you need to find other strategies, and it may be possible. I don't believe everybody who utilize medical cannabis have not tried other things as well. You know, what makes us believe that they haven't tried
Right.
anything else? You know, and what's wrong if this is the way in which they decide to combat their illness. For example, you talk about diabetes. No one is going to tell you to pray it away, but there are some other options that you possibly can do if that's what you decide to do. If you decide to eat all the small meals, cut out
Yep.
all of the carbohydrates and things that turn into sugar, the pastas, the breads, some of the white
Are
cane
you
sugar.
looking at my menu, dog? Like, what are you doing? Why are you talking about
I
my food
You know,
choices, man?
I just know how you possibly can reverse that thing, you know.
Right.
But some people don't choose to go that route. Some people
Right.
aren't disciplined enough to be able to do that. Therefore, that they have other options, you know. Even how you give yourself insulin has changed from you having to stick yourself to now they have meters that go on and check your
Yep.
sugar and things for you and regulate it through special pumps and things like that. So you know, as medicine progress, you know, so should we, you know, and I think that
Absolutely.
we have to be more open to all types of ways in order to help people to cope, you know, especially in the state that we're in now with dealing with so many mental health issues, dealing with so many physical issues. There needs to be a gamut of ways in which people can sort of begin to help themselves to heal because
Hmm.
everybody can't do what everyone does. Again, I think it's sort of like with teaching, we have to remember, you know, we have to differentiate for everyone, even in
Right.
health, you know. You have to give me some different options, you know. So I'm working out now because I didn't want to become pre-diabetes, but everybody's not going to work out
Right.
faithfully 3 times a week or have the resources to be able to, or if you're like me, I have to have resources to be able to pay a trainer in order to keep me on target, you know.
Right.
So what do we do with those people who don't have that dispensable income to be able to do those type of things, you know? We have to take all of those things into consideration when we're making policies, when we're making up our mind about what
Hmm.
our stance is, whether we're pro or anti. We need to think of all of those different components when we're making up our mind.
You sound like you're saying we should treat people like people. What? We shouldn't engage in like that. I'm grateful for the segue, and that brings us into how we treat our returning citizens. Because what you're
Wow.
talking about, even in the context of cannabis and diabetes and those types of things, these policy issues, we're still going back to recognizing that people are people and
Yeah.
trying to help them develop the agency in themselves so they can have the tools so they can make better decisions.
Yes.
A lot of times in our communities, people look at some of the negative outcomes and they just say, oh, well, they can't handle it. Let us come in and make decisions for you, which
Mm-hmm.
never trains communities on how to make decisions for themselves. And so I know that with the key, your organization, the key, and a lot of the work and advocacy work that you've done, you have focused really heavily into helping people develop their own agency, helping them figure out who they are and how they show up in their lives.
Yes.
And so can you talk a little bit about when we're talking about some of these returning citizens who have been in jail for cannabis and have watched all these people make millions of dollars and people, having cannabis shops and they're sitting in jail, that's going to be a real talk. That's a little rough to come back to. And
Yeah,
so
that
what
is.
type of resources are out there from your perspective, or how can we help as people who may be on the outside, wanting to welcome our returning citizens back? What should we do? What should we know about so that we can be a better citizens for them or to them?
Well, number one, I think a lot of my research shows that support is one of the number one things that people are going to need. So we need to make sure that we're supporting them to help them in their efforts to keep their feet on the street. Making sure that we're making sure they understand. Again, a lot of them have been in for so long, for doing so many years, for some of these trumped up charges, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
That they don't understand. Now you have to apply for jobs online, so you have to be able to walk them through that. Everyone has a computer in hand, and you have to be able to interact with
Mm-hmm.
the social. In order to be social nowadays, most socialization is happening through social media. So being
Right.
able to make sure that they understand how that works and what that looks like, and what is the proper decorum when utilizing these things. What should you be texting about? What should you be using your phone for? What type of images are you going to be putting out there about yourself, because you
Mm-hmm.
already have an F
Mm-hmm.
on your life report card, so people are already judging you because of that. Now, what are the images that you're going to show others in your plight to keep your feet on the street, in your plight to stay out of prison? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that we have to be understanding and really understand the numbers. See, what happens to me is a lot of times we pretend like, these people are just such bad people, and some of them are, but then there are
Sorry.
some who just made a mistake, and like I
Right.
always say, we all are just one mistake away from being incarcerated ourselves. So we have to take those things into consideration, and just human compassion when dealing with people. Not acting surprised when someone share with you that they have a criminal background, because let's be honest, 1 out of every 3 African American, 1 out of every 6 Latin American, 1 out of every 11 white American, and 1 out of 9 Americans, period, are going to have some time that they deal with the penal system here in the United States. So someone or have been in close proximity with someone who has done some time. So let's just be real and stop pretending as if we're so afraid to be able to offer some assistance and some mentorship to these people, because a lot of times they come out and they really want to do better. They just don't know how to do better. And
Right.
again, even tying back into the cannabis piece, a lot of them come out and want to do that recreational. I mean, many of these people are going to be suffering from post-traumatic syndrome from being
And
incarcerated,
incarcerated.
trying
Absolutely.
to get But again, with having restrictions of what they can and can't do, they can find themselves back in prison again, all because they decided to tote, or they decided to eat an edible at a function that weekend, and now they're being criminalized all over again for something that could really have medicinal or helpful purposes to
Yeah.
help them to either deal with the hardships of transitioning again. Because see, we always think that transitioning is easy. We have to remember that coming from prison is a culture within itself. So you're
Mm-hmm.
leaving one culture and one way of life, entering into something again, and depending on how long you've been away, we know there's a major shift every 5 to 10 years. There's a major shift. So if you've been gone for longer than 5 or 10 years, things are different than how you remember. So there's going to be that learning curve. There's
Yep.
going to be that level of frustration and wanting to give up just because of the lack of knowledge that these individuals are going to have. So we're going to have to really, be willing to be supportive, be
Mm-hmm.
willing to hear, and be willing to listen, and try to give guidance and not be so judgmental like we can be, because a lot of times it's the small things that matter and help people to be able to keep their feet on the street, finding jobs, making sure they have a livable wage, because a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
come out owing fines and things, they still, even though they paid their debt to society in regards to doing time, but they still have to pay retribution. They have to pay court fines. They have to begin to figure out how they're going to get to and fro from work, because many of them won't have licenses. Sometimes, they're all supposed to get Social Security cards and IDs and things when they get out. But what happened if there's one of the individuals who slipped through the crack? I mean, I don't know about you. If you ever took the time to go to MVA and think you're going to be in and out of there, you have another thing coming. So what happens?
Absolutely.
We're frustrated, those of us who have all our paperwork and things together. So imagine coming home and you have none of these things together, and these are all things that's going to be required for you to lead a productive and democratic life within society. It can become very frustrating, But also being able to have information to point people so to the one stops. There's a lot of things that the state of Maryland offer to its citizens who are returning citizens and those who are not. To utilize 11 Utah Street for the services that they have to help people to find apprenticeships, to find jobs, to help you to get tied in and locked in with things. So know about those things like the I think they call AJC centers, I believe. If I'm
I
not
think they are
mistaken.
called AJC. Yeah.
These centers that help people to be able to get resumes together, begin to prepare to interview. And help people to understand that that it's a process. When you see that somebody is ready to give in and throw in the towel and return back to old ways, remind them, in a very kind way, that, about their time that they spent in prison, but also remind them that, Rome wasn't built in a day, that this is a process that you have to be willing to slow walk it in order to be successful. Because a lot of times you know how it is when you, in a perfect utopia, those things that you believe you're going to start these businesses and you're going to have $1 million industry overnight, that really isn't realistic. But when you have a lot of time on your hands to dream, I'm a dreamer, so in dreams, within a matter of those 8 hours that I'm sleeping, I have destroyed a fire-breathing dragon and saved the entire world,
Right.
But realistically, it takes a lifetime to be able to slay a dragon, and you may have you only have the opportunity maybe once or twice to even fight a dragon because we don't know where they are or if they really exist or not.
Right.
So helping people to really understand the reality of how life works. I mean, we all want these CEOs. But you can't be CEO immediately. You have to come in entry level, or you can't be CEO and you don't have CEO skills.
Right.
You have
That's a
more
skill.
of an entry
Absolutely.
level or a mid level skill set. So I'm beginning to understand and how we can help these people to begin to build their skill set so that they are marketable. Because I think a lot of times we overlook a lot of things if the person has a high skill set. People overlook certain attributes. If you
Right.
can, if you can break into a computer, or if you are good with cybersecurity, or if you are good with whatever it is the skill is that you may have. I think about all the time, a lot of people who work on my cars are returning citizens that I know, family members, or they're former addicts or things like that who have great skill sets. So I'm willing to overlook certain things because I know
Right.
that they're going to get the job done, So I think that we have to help people to understand that, and we have to begin to see beyond just the surface things that we look for in people, such as having a felonious background or being a returning citizen. Now we don't want to be bothered with them because we become afraid, and we don't always even know what the charges are, what it is that someone has done. So I think that that's very important for us to really, mindset is everything in how we treat people, and dealing with our own personal biases and our own personal prejudices that we have, that cease us from being as empathetic or sympathetic as we could or should be in regards to others.
You know what, dude? You get me motivated. I'm inspired right now. I've been recently elevated to general manager of BlackUSA.news. So big up on that. So that means I got power. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do.
Okay.
I'm going to give away 5 tickets to our nonprofit, starting a nonprofit, and I'm gonna give 5 tickets to the grant writing workshop. We'll cover the cost of attendance or whatever, for organizations that work with returning citizens. Because you're absolutely right. A lot of these organizations, there are people who, when you return, there's not a lot of resources out there. And like we talked about cannabis and stuff like that, there's still the stigma associated about who you are. And people make these decisions before they even get an opportunity to know you. So if you all are out there and you are working with people and you're giving them a shot, you're treating them like people, we want to celebrate that. Where's the link? Where's the link? Email me here. Email me here. And absolutely, the first 5 that I get an email from that work with returning citizens, you got free tickets to the workshops because, bro, you right. You are absolutely right. If the system is not going to help people because all what you're talking about is about the relationship, and systems can't develop relationships. It really is about the people who are doing the work. And so if there are people out there who are doing it, please hit us up and we will make sure that we support you as best we can. So thank you, but
Exactly.
I feel inspired, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you could be inspired. You know, we have to understand that we are the community. You know, I oftentimes, you know, get sick and tired of hearing people waiting for government or organizations to come in and to do things, and we don't look at it on the micro level. You know, I think about my community. I live within Baltimore City, you know, and as much as I would love for them to have more, you know, friendly cops and policemen out on the beat and things, let's just be realistic. I understand how that those type of organizations truly work. So it is the responsibility myself ensure that we're doing now. Can we fill potholes? Of course not. We can't. But can we pick up trash that's in front of our community? Of course we can. Can we keep a watchful eye on our neighbor's property, and when we see things that's looking a little strange, call our neighbor or call the police to come and investigate because we know that this is something? Then of course we can, because when we begin to move on the micro level like you're doing, that's when we can begin to have a bigger impact. I like to call it the potluck theory. You know, if we
Yes.
all bring and do our own little portion, we can end up having a smorgasbord of food, where everybody's little becomes a lot. So you do
Yeah.
your small part, I do my small part, and then when we put it all together, we have covered a multitude of areas. You know,
Hey, yo,
instead of
you what?
always trying
Stop.
to
Yo, you know what? This is where I always so this. I'm gonna let y'all into some of the background because I see that we're behaving. Well, at least you are behaving professionally. But this is what happens because now when we have these conversations, Caston will say something that'll spark an idea with me, and then next thing we know, we got a whole ass project going on. So I'm thinking we put together like as far as the nonprofit series goes. We start putting together a program called the Potluck Program, where everybody brings a little bit of their resources. Where we focus, maybe from 1 month, we focus on reentry. Everybody, if I got 2 hours to donate to a person or organization reentry, I got that. And then maybe next month is education, is potluck. Everybody just brings their little bit. See what you did? You create a whole ass program on the show. First thing on 420.
but it's
And this is,
realistic
you know
because
what's funny? We're not even smoking enough, and then we come up with these magical ideas. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
don't need to I don't need to confirm nor deny. Um, you know, as I am on camera and this is in the public eyesight. You know, however, you know, I think that's very important. You know, because I also believe in everything that you need is in the room. Too
Mm.
often we want to utilize other people's resources, and if I only had Jay Z's reach or money, or if I
Mhm,
only
mhm, mhm,
had
mhm,
this
mhm,
political figures, you know, clout or platform, when we all, you know, have people that we interact with all the time that can help us in almost every facet of our life, you know, whether it be trying to be entrepreneur, if it's trying some educational advocacy, if it's foreign language, if it's things with the law, you know, you have to begin to ask around and share your inquiries with people, and then you'll begin to find that the answers are already in the room that you're already in, so you don't have to keep trying to look outside of where
mhm,
we
mhm,
actually are, you know, and that's what we have to begin to go in order to develop stronger communities, in order for us to have even more inclusive communities as well, is by utilizing the people that are around us. But a lot of times we're not inclusive because someone doesn't look like us, or someone
right.
doesn't have the same religion as us, or sexuality as us, or gender as us. Then we begin to not see them as a worthy um, individual to be able to share or to teach us. But when
Mhm,
you're more inclusive, you're beginning to see that you have even more resources available and more
mhm.
people available to you when you're willing to come outside of your small box.
Yeah, yeah, your preconceived notions.
Yeah.
And one of the other things is that is one that I think more people are understanding and getting to know. The one that I find a lot more insidious is the people who are accidentally discriminate to help me. And I've had somebody bring this to my attention because there was a project at one of the organizations that I was had a contract with. There was a project that I wasn't included on, and the project fit like
Okay.
in my skill set. Like if everything that they needed, I could contribute to it, but I wasn't asked to be on that project. You know why I wasn't asked to be on the project?
Why?
Because I'm black, and let me explain to you why. Because I'm black, because they didn't think it was a problem. Because there's a guy on the team who has to be there, and he says real like stuff that's not cool. So they didn't want to, and they know like I would be offended by stuff like that. So they were trying to help, so I wouldn't be put in that situation.
Okay.
But do you see how that help is still discriminatory? They didn't even see it until I brought it to their attention. I'm like, you're still keeping me out because I'm black. You just aren't owning it. You have allowed and enabled his racism that now I still have to live with. Yeah, I don't have
Yeah.
to hear him say it, but now I didn't get that project. So what does that do to my career? They get the people who were at that table in that room. Because again, like you said, we got to bring more people to the room. The answer could be in the room. And to your point about
Sure.
inclusion, sometimes we keep people out of the room for their own protection. Oh,
Wow.
I don't want you to feel embarrassed and not understand what's going on. So I won't invite you to this meeting. I'll invite you to the one for the public.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
we exclude people in the it's so funny, DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, how people exclude people in the name of diversity.
Because they don't want people to feel uncomfortable, or they're trying to protect people. Not realizing that part of diversity, equity, and inclusion is sometimes having those uncomfortable conversations,
Absolutely.
making people and yourself to feel uncomfortable. Because when you're trying to grow in regards to being culturally competent, it's not always a good feeling when your prejudices or your biases are pointed out to you. You feel that little stinging in your chest, but you know what
Yeah.
that stinging in your chest is, don't you? That's
Right.
just your pride. It's just your pride. You know. So go ahead and get over it in order for you to be able to grow by leaps and bounds. I'm really, on this Superman metaphor, leaps and bounds. That's how we grow. When we're put in uncomfortable situations, when the pressure is really applied, again, that's when the diamond is actually beginning to become
Oh,
when
yeah.
the pressure is applied, when the times gets tight on you. When you are, it causes for you to grow and to become a bigger person.
Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right about um, the need to have those conversations. And I find that a lot of some of the things that we've been talking about, they are the problems that we have with them are wrapped around this concept of comfort. I don't want. I yesterday talked to Stacey Dennis about sexual practice, part of our titillating Tuesdays, sexual practices and stuff like that. And what we talked about is that a lot of times parents aren't talking to their kids because the parents are uncomfortable.
Wow.
And so the
Yeah, and we
same,
have to have those uncomfortable conversations. I mean, let me just go ahead and be
yeah,
transparent. Like for me, I have a difficult time in the past of dealing with black men, just on business levels and levels that are more, that networking.
mm-hmm,
I'm more comfortable dealing with women, for a multiplicity of reasons. But I had to come to grips that, sir, there's going to be times where you're going to have to deal with men. You're going to have to deal, and particularly black men, and you're
mm-hmm,
going to have to be able to be comfortable even then in the skin that you're in around
mm-hmm,
these people, being able to be yourself,
yep,
being able to share you and express your ideas and your beliefs and how you feel. Even though it makes me feel uncomfortable, but what I'm finding is that I'm able, when I be myself, even in these instances, I'm still able to again move with leaps and bounds. I'm still able to be effective even with this population, which is a population that I'm not the most comfortable with,
mm-hmm,
or not the most comfortable being around,
mm-hmm,
being Jack Ken. and not Dr. Caston. So, always trying to make sure that what I'm saying is making sense, and that I'm not doing something that's going to make others feel uncomfortable. Pretty much not with me, but with who they are.
Absolutely.
Which becomes, issues sometimes that I take on for myself, being bogged down by the perception of how others are going to view me and how others are going to feel because of their perceptions or their point of views.
And I find that a lot of the disinvested members of disinvested communities, they are taught to do that, sometimes for survival purposes. Like, in my family, I grew up in DC in the 80s, where the young crew that's when people first started getting killed for chains and tennis shoes. Like, nobody had ever heard of that before. But all of a sudden this happened. And so my parents were on the whole, you don't leave the front porch. Like, you can play down to the steps, but do not step on the sidewalk, because they were concerned. And again, rightfully so. And part of what it took me a while to learn was how to navigate in the streets of DC. Now, fortunately, I guess, there was a period of time where we didn't have a car and we had to take the bus back and forth to school and stuff like that. And so I was able to learn some of these skill sets. So when my mother got a job, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, I have another week I'll only be able to go with you for another week. So let's practice this. The fact that I had those experiences beforehand put me in a better position so that I could navigate and have greater agency. It was still scary. Don't get it twisted. And I'm sure she was, because again, that was also when people were driving through, and actually not as much. It was more family members who were molesting kids and, leaders. But that was when everybody tried to get scared about the guy in the van. You know, the guy in the van back in the day. Who always had candy and a mattress in the back of the van. Like, and he was always looking for you, just you. Yeah. And it's like, he's coming. And it was like, that was stressful. Anytime I saw a white van, I got scared. My heart rate, because I was like, he's coming to get me now. This is the time he's coming to get me. And in an effort to try to protect children, we limit their ability to navigate these spaces. We don't teach them, because we aren't comfortable with ex-offenders or returning citizens. We teach them not to be afraid. I mean, we teach them to be afraid, because we have misconceptions about THC, marijuana. Like, we teach them those things. And so I think, to your point, it becomes this critically important portion where we focus on educating and advancing ourselves so that we can be better people, not just to those people who are like returning citizens, those who need cannabis and things like that, but better damn people for our kids and the generation to come behind us. Because we kind of stuck right now.
Yeah. And just being real, with, when we don't know, but not being afraid to really, confront our ignorance, but then once we confront it, we do something in order to no longer be ignorant.
There you go.
I had to examine, why are you uncomfortable in these situations, Jaquan? Why do you feel uncomfortable? And then put myself in those situations, and then give myself goals in those situations. I'm going to talk to 4 black men today, purposefully, with a reason, in order to, navigate these fears, in order to help me to grow. And it's an uncomfortable position for me. I have to often, go into wanting to have anxiety attacks and panic, but I have to push myself to do that, because this is something that has to, I have to, what's the word I'm looking for? I have to
overcome.
There we go. I was going to say capture, but I have to overcome, how this feeling that I have, because it can become a hindrance to me, because you never know in what settings. I don't know who I'm going to have to deal with, who is going to be the person I'm going to have to seek knowledge from, who is going to be able to have the ability to open doors for me to be able to sit at particular tables, and I don't want to miss out on that because of any misconceptions and things that I have. I have formulated a lot of times when it's just that fear, that false evidence appearing real, when really the major problem is all in my head and all in my trumped up imagination.
And so I'm gonna tell them about you. So, because you're my friend. I remember, like, when we got to know each other, how you were like, I didn't think that we'd be cool, just because of all of the way that I showed up, especially in the way that I showed up in the context we met. Professionals like, oh, he never going, that kind of guy. And it's the same thing. And it's like, and I was, and for me, I was like, oh, he just don't like me because whatever. I have no idea. And then when I got to know you, I realized it was because you're introvert. It wasn't that you didn't like me. It's that, like you were talking about, those skill sets. I mean, this is like 10, 15 years ago. It's like, so those
Sure.
skill sets. And so the story in my head was that, oh, he just don't bang with me because he got some issue with me or whatever. Because all I saw, I did not know you were an introvert. I just
And most
assumed that it
people
must be
don't.
me. Right.
Most
But
people,
you see what
most
I'm
people
saying?
think I'm this super over the top extrovert who's just the life of the party all of the time, and it's like, oh, not so.
But that's what I'm saying, and like you as an example, or that story about accepting people and recognizing their humanity, and not just saying, oh, look at the cover of this book. I know what it's
Yeah,
going to be about, and
yeah,
because again, if I see you at an event, you are literally a different person because the event, and again, not two-faced kind of way, but like you have
yeah.
fun and you're entertaining and you're
Sure.
engaging. But that's not that, and because for me, a room full of people, I got you all. I can speak. I have done keynote speeches and with 10 minutes notice for about an hour. But one on one with people, I'm like, oh god, all right, what am I gonna say? Because I know me well enough that I sometimes just say the things that I think, and sometimes that doesn't go well. So when people see me talking a big room or whatever, and then they talk to me one on one, they're like, "Are you the same person? Like that's not the dude who was just out there. You
Right.
sound real kind of. Are you okay? Did you have a
Sure.
stroke? Like did somebody not hug you? Okay, some of these things have only been said once, but they still hurt. But you really illustrate how we need to, and that story, it reminded me of that story, like how we need to get beyond our feelings about other people tend to be about us, how
Yep.
we perceive them. And
Yep.
if you have a story about how someone feels about you, and again, if I had kept the story about, well, he just don't bang with me because whatever, that's his problem, blah blah blah, I would have lost an opportunity to have a great friend because of the
Right.
story in my head. And that's one of the things, like when you were talking about with returning citizens, that's why we got 5 organizations at least that's going to get some help, because it is critically important that we stop looking at people by their circumstances, by their designations, and really start looking at them as people. And so you, and again, I thought that story about the story in my head about how you felt about like all of that. Like I know he did this. I know he's thinking this because he did this, and only if you did this, like, sir, are you having this conversation by yourself? And a
Exactly.
lot of times we do the same thing with returning citizens. A lot of times we do the same thing with people who smoke cannabis. We come up with a story about who they are and how they are and what they should be doing when we don't know any of that information.
No. And
So,
then we have to remember that no one group, whether they're marginalized or not, there's no monolith. There's no cookie cutter way that everyone is. You can't look at everyone across the board. Everyone who's from the project isn't the same. I have to share that with a lot of returning citizens I deal with who think that I'm from, that my background is so vastly different than theirs. Just because I don't speak like you or I don't look, like you, we're the same stereotypical
sometimes come from the
eating
same
after school
neighborhood.
special. We're the same, stereotypical statistics, brother and sister. It just, again, it doesn't look one certain way. You know what I'm saying? It's not just all suit and ties, not all just baggy pants in front. It's a multiplicity of manners in which one can be from different groups. And I think once we begin to realize that, nothing irks me more than to hear someone say, "Oh my gosh, you're so articulate," or "You talk like you're
Mm,
white." That's not true. There's lots of black people who speak in this manner. You know what I'm saying? There's lots of black people who are articulate or who code switch beautifully. Who
mm-hmm,
knows the appropriate time, that there's a time and a place and a season for everything. So not everyone is um not the same, regardless of where you're from, or your race, or your gender, your sexuality, or your economical status. People are people, and people are different. I love it. The song Ebony and Ivory. There's good and bad in everyone.
mm-hmm,
So in
mm-hmm.
every race, in every subgroup that they are, you're gonna have the wheat along with the chaff. And we have to remember that when we're dealing with people. And remember, you have to deal with people on an individualistic basis. you know. And once we can really get to that, you know, even though I know we look at people as a whole sometime, but you know,
Yeah,
then we have to understand even within this forest, there's individual trees and there's different
yeah,
types of trees,
absolutely.
you
And
know, that makes up the forest.
so, you know what I just realized? Like, we did this again. Every time you come on the show, we go over time because I'm like, damn, we having a great conversation. I lose track of time. This is your fault. I'm gonna blame you because Donnie asked me. I'm gonna be like, yo, I got a dope guess. What you want me to do? You want me to start? He's spitting fire. You want me to stop? You want me to stop, son?
It has been 1 hour, so we're
Yeah.
gonna go, you know, and today
So,
is a
wait.
national holiday for some, so I don't
Yeah,
want to hold up.
absolutely. Well, you know, I'm going to help somebody celebrate. Absolutely. Actually, hell with that hot box celebration all the way around. Whoop whoop. Okay. Um, brother, I'm looking forward to the next time we have a conversation. Maybe next time we talk about the services and some of the resources that are available for our returning brothers and sisters so that we can be in a better situation, a better position to start referring them to places where they can get some help. I appreciate
Yes,
you bringing up the one-stop center.
yes, let's please continue the conversation in regards to helping out brothers and sisters who are returning citizens who are coming back to us so that we can help them to beat the 75% recidivism rate. You know, 75%
Amen.
of them return to prison within 5 years, and those are not good statistics. We want to be we want to help to tear down those statistics and to prove them to be a lie.
Cool in the game, brother. All right, thank you so much, brother. We will catch up with you the next time you're on the show. Hope you have a great rest of the day, however you decide to spend it. All right. Yo, how many times do I have to tell you all I know dope people? I know some of the dopest people. And dude, that conversation about reentry, about taking people as humans, that is the important part. That is the part that makes the most sense. That is what we need to be doing. And so I am so grateful for my brother from another mother, Dr. Ken Caston, to come. I might even get him to spit some Spanish for y'all because that brother does that too. Well, this has been a wonderful time for those of you all who are going to go out and partake and celebrate. Enjoy yourselves safely and responsibly. And we will be black tomorrow.